On one hand, our starting defensive line looks fierce, but on the other hand, we have a questionable lack of depth right behind those top guys. A fresh insider report just dropped an encouraging update regarding a second-year interior defender fighting hard for his football life. After a very rough rookie season, he is finally putting things together in camp and leading a tight roster battle. Stay until the end, and please subscribe to join our great Eagles family. Ty Robinson is currently locked in a fierce, high-stakes competition for a final roster spot on the Philadelphia Eagles' active 53-man squad. This second-year defensive lineman arrived as a former fourth-round pick with significant potential, yet his tenure has been anything but a smooth ride. During his rookie season, he struggled to find his footing, and early in this training camp, he appeared buried deep on the depth chart while working exclusively with developmental players. Fans have been rightfully concerned about his trajectory, especially given the questions surrounding the depth of our interior defensive line behind the top four. However, the narrative is shifting fast. According to Philly Voice's Jimmy Kempski, Robinson is now ranked as the most likely bubble player to earn a spot on the final roster. I have personally tracked his progression, and the difference in his intensity is palpable. And I'll be straight with you, the organization clearly remains invested in his development rather than cutting ties this soon. Since the start of camp, he has steadily captured more meaningful reps and demonstrated a visible improvement that the coaching staff simply cannot ignore. Still, do not think this job is handed to him. The roster spot is far from a guarantee, as both Byron Young and Gabe Hall have shown impressive flashes of talent that suggest they belong in the league. This is a classic battle of endurance and execution that creates a real headache for the decision-makers. It forces us to ask a critical question. Is Robinson's recent surge enough to hold off the challengers, or will the late-rising momentum of his peers push him out? Understanding exactly what the team prioritizes, experience or raw upside, is the tension that will define these final weeks before the regular season begins to unfold. Can this former fourth-round draft choice truly sustain his momentum long enough to secure his professional future here? Watching his trajectory shift from a player buried on the developmental squad to the top contender for that final roster spot has been one of the most interesting stories of this summer. My assessment of the situation suggests that the front office has grown weary of the persistent concerns regarding our lack of interior defensive line depth. They know relying solely on the established top four is a risk they cannot afford to take, which is why the pressure on these younger athletes is currently at an all-time high. The truth is, the organization's patience has been tested, yet they appear unwilling to abandon the investment they made in this young man just yet. Jimmy Kempski of Philly Voice has been closely monitoring these developments, and his analysis highlights how Robinson has managed to turn a genuinely rough rookie season into a legitimate shot at permanence. While his progress is undeniable, I have to emphasize that he is still locked in a direct standoff against both Byron Young and Gabe Hall. These two challengers have shown enough flashes of talent on the field to keep the decision-makers on their toes throughout these final weeks. Are these flashes of talent simply occasional sparks? Or do they signal a real threat to the established hierarchy? Every single rep counts now as the margin for error effectively disappears. I expect to see the staff leaning heavily on the consistency of these practice performances as they prepare to finalize the 53-man roster. Watching the way he handles this specific high-stakes pressure, I think his ability to adapt will remain the deciding factor, even as his competition pushes him to perform better every single day. That analysis covers the current situation, but moving beyond the roster move itself, let us look at what this really means for the organization. Why does a backup defensive line spot matter so much right now? I see the stakes clearly. The lack of depth behind the top four players is a glaring vulnerability that could derail the defense if any injuries occur during the grueling grind of the regular season. If Ty Robinson secures this position over challengers like Byron Young or Gabe Hall, it directly alters the defensive rotation, providing a much-needed injection of youth and stamina. And this is the part that gets me. The team is not just filling a roster spot, but betting on the long-term potential of a player they initially drafted to grow within this specific scheme. This roster decision ripples forward to how the staff prepares for high-intensity matchups against our division rivals. Having a more capable fifth man on the line means being able to sustain pressure deep into the fourth quarter against tougher offensive fronts. I suspect that if Robinson continues his upward trend, his presence will allow the defensive unit to remain aggressive rather than being forced into conservative schemes late in games. Does this single decision shift our playoff ceiling? Honestly, I believe depth is exactly what separates legitimate contenders from those who fade when the weather turns cold in December. With the season quickly approaching, every practice rep for these three candidates is essentially a job interview. While fans might see a routine roster battle, my read is that this specific outcome will signal how much the front office trusts their recent draft investments to contribute immediately. Watching how this develops throughout the remaining preseason slate will tell us everything we need to know about the long-term strategy of this defensive front. High ceiling potential is exactly why Ty Robinson continues to dominate the conversation regarding the final roster spots. While a former fourth-round choice failing to make an immediate impact is frustrating, his physical development over this preseason suggests he finally understands the demands of the interior defensive line. Philly Voice reporter Jimmy Kempski notes that Robinson is currently the frontrunner to secure a job, citing a marked shift in his daily practice intensity compared to his rough rookie debut. The bottom line here is that the franchise is unwilling to cut bait on a player with his specific upside when the depth behind the top four remains thin. Conversely, the downside is undeniable. If he cannot maintain this current momentum, his progress might be dismissed as a temporary summer flash rather than true professional growth. Competition is fierce, and the team needs to know if he can handle the grind of an entire regular season. Both Byron Young and Gabe Hall have recorded impressive reps, forcing the coaching staff to measure consistency against raw ability every single day. What I really think about this entire situation is that the enthusiasm surrounding Robinson's upward trend might be slightly premature until he proves it against high-level competition. Many observers seem convinced his roster spot is effectively locked, but I am not ready to close the book on Byron Young or Gabe Hall just yet. These two contenders are hungry, and they possess the exact type of disruptive energy that coaches often favor when finalizing those difficult decisions at the end of training camp. Watching how Robinson performs in the final preseason games will tell me if he has earned this status or if he is simply riding a wave of positive press. Can he lock this down under actual pressure, or will the others overtake him? When you combine the current roster status with the broader organizational goals for this interior line, the picture that emerges is one of calculated risk and urgent evaluation. My read is that the front office is desperately searching for reliable depth. And while Ty Robinson has clearly improved, the lack of a locked-in solution behind the starters remains a significant concern for the 2026 season. What nobody is talking about is how this decision reflects a shift in how the club balances draft investment against immediate production. If Robinson does not secure this spot, does that suggest a failure in how the team identifies developmental interior talent during the early rounds? I believe this specific battle determines whether the unit can sustain its intensity throughout a long winter. The fact that he is now ranked as the most likely bubble player